I think the biggest trend that I'm seeing in the market is that data privacy is evolving within a larger AI governance function. It's not that AI is everything. There is obviously loads of types of technology that don't necessarily involve AI. I mean,
Yeah.
SaaS under an umbrella is so huge, but almost every single data protection officer, data protection lawyer, or general program manager, almost every CISO I know, everyone is upskilling in AI governance right now. Because it is the way of the future.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. Your host here, Alessandro Cutri, joined today by none other than the Leila Golchehreh. We'll be diving into her story, a little bit about her company, Reliance AI, and much more industry insights. So definitely make sure to stick around. But without further ado, I'll kind of just kick it on over to you, Leila, if you don't mind just introducing yourself and telling the audience just a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alessandro. Nice pronunciation of my last name, by the way, pretty
Tried my best.
impressive.
Tried my best.
No, it's great to be here, and I appreciate you making the time. So yes, as you mentioned, I'm Leila Golchehreh. I am an attorney by trade, but I actually kind of developed my career, into becoming a founder. I've been working in data protection and AI and technology for the last 17 years. I was building out privacy, data governance, and data protection programs generally for a variety of different technology companies globally. And what I saw repeatedly through my work as the first data protection lawyer at GM Cruise on the autonomous vehicle, at Workday, Adaptive Insights, and various healthcare technology companies,
Mhm.
when I was also a chief privacy officer and data governance officer, was that all of the companies had ways of working, and this was true across the entire industry, which were always a little bit behind how fast technology was moving and how fast our engineers were moving.
Yeah.
And I had a variety of different experiences. And by the way, these are like many of the companies that I worked with, many of my clients had just gold star data protection, data governance programs
Uh-huh.
for what we could do with the technology available to us. But what never made sense to me, Alessandro, was why we had all this great technology on the engineering side for engineers that were using APM tooling or application performance monitoring tooling. They
Mhm.
had all kinds of wonderful security tooling using static code analysis and other hyper developed technologies leveraging some of the AI potential. Why we didn't do the same for privacy and data governance.
Yeah.
I looked at the entire market for tooling that I could use to do my job. I looked really, I mean, if you said you did data privacy or you had data privacy software back in 2018,
Mhm.
I called you and saw your product. I did demos of
Mhm.
everything I could find and
Mhm.
over and over again, and even under super tight deadlines. So, 2018 was a really, really big year for privacy because we had really the world's largest data protection regulation, the GDPR, going into effect.
Mhm.
And there was no good tech. And we were under tight deadlines to do this, and everything was really manual. We relied on interviewing teams, asking
Yeah.
them what they were doing, filling out spreadsheets, filling out forms and surveys, but nothing was embedded in the technology stack. I was like, can't any of these companies automate this? Let
Yeah.
me just scan the source code. All the answers to my questions about how is data being processed actually live in code. Let me
Mhm.
just scan that like we're using with open source software scanning like Black Duck and some of these other tools. Let me do that for data privacy. It didn't exist. And so
Mhm.
that was really what inspired me to become a founder.
Yeah.
I actually had approached a variety of different folks, and then I met someone, my now co-founder, who had worked in the APM space, and had gotten that level of experience. So he brought a new take to some of the infrastructure questions that I had, and it was a complementary skill set, and we ended up launching the company back in 2020.
Wow. Yeah, and I love the story because I think when we first talked about it, it's always interesting to see how founders a lot of time when they start a company, it's a problem that they had experienced in the past and that they were going through, and then they developed out a solution for it. And I think those are some of the best companies that come out of those actual real life problems that you're solving, because because you lived through it, right? And a lot of times people try to make products that they don't know necessarily if they solve a problem, but they're just hoping that it does, right? And so, but I love that you had that experience around that itself. And when it comes to Reliance AI and like what you guys are building over here, if you could just just for the audience to kind of wrap their head around exactly what you guys are doing, you don't have to talk about any names here, but like can you just share an example of a company that you were able to help before obviously using you guys and what the transformation they kind of went through?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, just to triple click on that point, I mean, I get approached by founders pretty regularly asking, should I build this thing or that thing? And exactly what you said, Alessandro, I think it's so important that the person has personally experienced the problem they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult to build a generational company unless and until you have personally kind of gone through the pain of your customer's journey. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what sets out what become the unicorn companies from pretty much all the rest. So I, really appreciate that
Yeah,
point.
definitely.
Um, so yeah, and because kind of transitioning into your next question, because I am the customer, right?
Mhm.
I can definitely not only speak to some of the problems that we've actually solved for customers, but from their own words. And we have a series of case studies on our website, reliance.ai, that's Reliance with a Y, where customers in their own words will explain how we've helped them to solve their problems. And a lot of public available names are on the website, including some large publicly traded companies across the technology sector. But one example is with the head of data privacy and data protection officer of Samsara. They have quite a lot of privacy and compliance considerations. And his name is Lawrence Shobe. He's a brilliant data protection lawyer. And he talks about how he was walking into meetings and then interviewing teams. What are you guys doing with data? How is it being processed? Who's accessing that data? He would
Yeah.
walk out of the meeting with answers to questions. But because data is moving, shifting, and flowing all the time, the moment he was done with these long interviews, filling out every form and survey very diligently, the information was immediately out of date.
Hmm.
And so the most critical problem that we solve, Alessandro, for our customers is that we are keeping a real time understanding
Yeah.
using observability technology so that organizations in real time know where their data is, know who's accessing their data, know what's being done to their data,
Yeah.
such that they don't need to just rely on an interview that they might have had 2 months ago with an engineering team, because especially in an age where AI is eating the world, there's just no way that we can continue to stay on top of things. So that's
Yeah.
just one story. But we have many, many customers that have all kinds of different experiences using automation for privacy and governance that have basically completely changed the way they worked from being very, very administrative to
Yeah.
finally being able to get a co-pilot telling them what's going on in their environment. And now they can focus on the strategic elements of their program, which, quite frankly, is exactly where people that are working at organizations should be spending their time, not chasing down answers to questions that are going to be obsolete as soon as you put it down on paper.
Definitely. Yeah. And you can see obviously they're like I always in terms of where you see a good product, right? And like when you see, good success stories that come out and to be able to establish that product market fit, right? And you obviously see it in your world. That's the most important thing that you're always trying to optimize for. How do we find product market fit? How do we make sure that, what we're delivering, people find value in? And, given the fact that you guys have the numerous success stories that you can, rely upon, even call upon, that is to show it's like, hey, our product actually does work and we're actually solving a real problem and it's actually helping people, right? And so that's the most important thing. And then the growth comes as a byproduct of that, right? That's typically how I always think about companies that do really well. Are companies building out that organic referral growth, and are people referring? Is there case study? What percentage of your clients are giving you case studies? How happy are they with your product? And so I love that you touched on that. And I think it leads me into my next question that I wanted to ask you around, which is more around, growth, right? As an organization and, growing your company. What were some of the things that have worked really well for you guys in terms of, helping, aid your growth as you guys continue to grow this?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Alessandro, because often what you need to balance is the amount of skill that you are experiencing with your customer growth, with how quickly you can onboard new people at the company
Mm,
and train them not just on kind of the basics, but who is the customer? Do you really understand our ICP or ideal customer profile?
yeah,
Do you really understand the different personas and how to speak with them and how to actively listen in order to ensure that we're really solving the problems that have been laid out?
yeah,
Or what does this look like? Because if you start to hire too quickly without being very, very strategic and thoughtful about who you bring on, you may have, I've heard expressions like the mythical man months, where you are spending resources, spending capital, but folks are not yet onboarded. So, of course, you need to scale, and it
yeah,
might feel like when you are starting to get, we have multiple public companies who are clients of ours, and it can feel sometimes as an earlier company, oh my gosh, we need to hire, hire, hire. But the reality is, yes, you need to hire, but do so incrementally and strategically, such that when you make those hires, the folks actually are trained and they feel empowered, and that's the most rewarding thing that you can do. But it's always a
it's
balance.
a balancing act, right? And it's one of the mistakes that actually we made, that I made early on, was hiring more than, for that anticipation, and then having people just, that you're just paying every single month and your payroll is just going higher and higher. You're like, wait a second, are these people actually doing anything right now? And it's that balancing act, to your point, of knowing when to, bring on new folks and train them, and being able to map that outward strategic, and that's why consistent growth is so important rather than, sporadic growth, because it doesn't allow you to plan, right? And so being able to consistently grow assists with that, right? And saying, hey, I know we're going to be taking on X amount in terms of the calculations here. And I think one philosophy that I've always came from and developed is that I always prefer lean teams. I think the leaner the team, the less waste there is. And I think that was one of the things that I learned early on was, okay, I'd rather have a lean team. And then, even if we have to struggle for a month per se, right, as we kind of onboard, I'd rather do that than have like 3 to 4 people that then there's a diffusion of responsibility within departments where it's like, hey, whose job is this type of thing? And so I agree, right? And it's that balancing act that you have to obviously go through. But when it comes to like the marketing side of things, because obviously we're a marketing company here, we always talk about marketing with different folks. What have you guys seen that has worked from that perspective that's helped you guys, continue to, fuel the growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a very kind of technical product and a very technical industry. We have true experts, which are our customers. They understand their domains, and we support not only folks like data protection lawyers and
Mhm.
AI governance professionals, but also cybersecurity leaders.
Yeah.
As a result of having kind of very specialized, focused areas for the folks that do purchase the Reliance AI platform, it's been really important for us not only to have the right types of content that they're interested in learning about and reading,
Yeah.
that we don't make our sales cycles just about closing a deal, but it's actually educational.
Mm.
That's
Hmm.
really critical because we're talking to very, very smart people.
Yeah.
That means that we need to be educating our sales team to have sophisticated conversations and be intellectually curious. So that, I
Yeah.
would say that's one key factor. Um, we've also, I mean, I think we've seen, especially with some of the new spam filters and even some of the data protection laws that make it sometimes hard to have email marketing campaigns. So we've also found that there's no substitute for in-person
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
And that means, of course, having a strategy for market reach that involves digital marketing strategies, but also kind of understanding exactly who you're talking with and getting that deep personal connection, I think, is really critical as well, Alessandro. Finding the
Definitely.
right associations with whom we can partner. There are a series of different trade associations that are our partners in this journey, because you have to figure out what your customers are thinking about, listening to, how they are receiving content and information, where are they going, what types of podcasts do they
Yeah.
listen to. This is one of the most important things to really understand. And once you've kind of mapped that out, that should help to really define the strategy. But as we were talking about before, Alessandro, it really comes down to understanding exactly who your customer is, and really knowing how to speak to them and how to reach them.
Definitely, right. And I think you touched on so many pieces of gold there that I think,
Mhm.
the listeners should take away from, right? When, first of all, especially when you're selling a complex product or you're selling something that requires a little bit more education, you have to make sure that you're intertwining that within the sales process itself so that the buyer is educated on it, right? Because a confused buyer is never going to buy anything, right? And they're not going to know what they should do and what is best for them in the situation that they're in. So providing that education, I think, is a great point. And then secondly, like you were even mentioning with relationships, right? I think relationships are so key, especially in your space and what you guys are doing, and prioritizing that and trying to say how can we develop these relationships, because at the end of the day, relationships are going to turn into deal flow, and deal flow is going to obviously turn into deals, right? And so that's what you have to be prioritizing as well. And like not losing the human connection side of things, right? Because we're all humans at the end of the day, right? Everyone interacts, and I think people forget that. But I do appreciate that you've harped on that, right? And that's something that you seems like you guys embody as well, as a sales organization and as a company. And when it comes to, some of the trends that you're seeing, right? Like in the market, and, you've obviously been in this industry now for a while. You've obviously experienced some of the pain points and then going to develop your own product for it. But what are some of the upcoming trends that you're really seeing that are kind of tackling the data privacy space, or just, the overall space that you guys are in, that you guys are kind of like, hey, this is really groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, great question, Alessandro. I think the biggest trend that I'm seeing in the market is that data privacy is evolving within a larger AI governance function.
Hmm.
It's not that AI is everything. There is obviously loads of types of technology that don't necessarily involve AI. I mean,
Yeah.
SaaS under an umbrella is so huge, but almost every single data protection officer, data protection lawyer, or general program manager, almost every CISO I know, everyone is upskilling in AI governance right now, because it is the way of the future.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to AI governance, there are also a lot of different trends. We saw what just happened actually this week with DeepSeek disrupting the market so tremendously, having NVIDIA lose $600 billion in market cap in a single day. That is how
Yeah.
fast AI is moving right now. So I think that we're going to continue to see major changes. Um, Within the AI governance space itself, DeepSeek was an open source technology. So I think this does kind of re-raise the question of open source within the global technology stack. What does that look like? And how do
Yeah.
we generally think about that from a risk perspective as well when we
Mhm.
are kind of procuring open source technology and building really fast? Are we thinking about those governance implications, the legal questions, security questions, privacy, data governance questions? How is that being considered in the larger stack? But I would say, in a nutshell, the future really is going to be around AI governance, and that is really where the whole market is trending.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things where it's about positioning yourself in that way too, right? Because you obviously see it. One thing is seeing the trend, and then one thing is also capitalizing on it as well, right? And I think that that's kind of what you guys, it seems like you guys are trying to do as well, which is definitely the good place to be as an entrepreneur, the good place to be as a founder, is seeing the trends, seeing them unfold, and being able to capitalize them as well, because it's the reality of where we're going, as a society. AI is one of those things that's going to continue to really not take over, but really leave a trail, right? In the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, the next 5 to 10 years, right? It's really I'm very curious to see what it continues to do and how it's going to continue to change the industry as well. So great point, and I love that you brought that up. But one of the final things I wanted to touch on over here, Leila, because I appreciate the conversation. This has been fun. But I wanted to talk, and dive into just, your entrepreneur journey, right? Because a lot of people, they never actually go down this path. They maybe have ideas that they want to do, or they have a business that they want to start, but they never go down that path because maybe they're a little scared of taking that leap and going into the unknown and doing all that. What advice would you be able to give to other entrepreneurs that are on the brink of wanting to do something but still a little bit uncertain about taking that first step?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, Alessandro, as we talked about earlier, make sure you've experienced the problem yourself personally.
Mhm.
And for it, I don't know if I have all the answers, but I can just speak for why I started Reliance. Um, I experienced this problem so viscerally, and I had seen the market and I had seen what we had gone through and having to build out these programs without good technology. And I just knew that I could do this differently and do this correctly. And that's what really inspired me to do it. And for me, the voice in my head was just too
Mhm.
loud to ignore at some
Yeah.
point, because you do have to be a pretty risk and you
You gotta
cannot
be a
be
little
really
crazy.
risk averse. You gotta be I was kind of leaning toward crazy. I was like, maybe that's too strong of a word to use, but you have to be willing to sacrifice quite a lot, right? And this is not for the faint of heart. There are ups and downs at any given day. You will have your best day ever and your worst day ever. Sometimes the same day is both your best and your worst day. So I think it's about really believing that you can do things correctly, and validate, because there are a lot of things that folks might be passionate about, but just being passionate about something is not sufficient to really create a sustainable business, right? So I think before writing a single line of code, before hiring anyone, validate, validate, validate. Call anything that you think might be true. It is only true if your customers can really confirm that it is true. Okay, so just test your idea,
Yeah.
test your theory, and get that market validation before you get started on anything. And then I guess, my last kind of point is really think about whether you want to kind of try to self fund, or go for VC funding. I think
Mhm.
that's a really big question because those are also two different paths. And
Yeah.
that's probably the subject of an entirely different conversation. But I
Yeah.
think it's a very, very important consideration for entrepreneurs. Do you want to try to get angel funding? Can you get this off the ground without, taking really big checks from institutional VCs? Where do you see yourself living, and what
Yeah.
type of company do you want to build? So a lot of considerations, but I
Yeah.
know we're short on time, so I
Yeah.
don't know how much deeper you want
No,
to go
I
into it,
actually
but
want to
those
touch
are
on
some
that,
of
just that
my points.
specifically, because I think that's a great point, because I think a lot of people are always under that umbrella, like under that impression. Do I seek out funding? Do I self fund this? What would you say, like, if they're thinking about doing either or, what would you say are kind of, because uh, you've obviously been through this now, like what would you say are some of the maybe the pros, the cons, and kind of what you should consider before you go out and get funding, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the whether or not you have the financial stability in order to self-fund. I mean, I think that's that's a basic question
Yeah.
because if you're going to be eating ramen and okay with that for some time, then that's one choice. I mean, even with VC funding, I mean, you are probably eating ramen for some time. Like, we didn't pay ourselves. I didn't pay anything to myself when we had first gotten started, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a big, and we had VC funding. So that's one question is, can you take the financial risk in doing this?
Yeah.
That's very, very critical. Or do you need a baseline salary? So I think there's a lot of questions that can be answered by just doing some simple math in a spreadsheet. Take the
Yeah.
time to do that. So that's
Yeah.
the at the outset. Secondarily, when you're taking VC money, you are basically promising to scale and go really big, really fast, and become a unicorn. So that might not be what everyone wants. Some people
Yeah.
might want just smaller types of businesses. They might just kind of be happy doing a cool, couple 100,000 a year. And that's a very different path. In that case, maybe you can start to see returns by just self-funding,
Yeah.
if you can kind of build up to that particular point. So I think
Yeah.
that's another big question. And
Yeah.
hey, but that is not to say that even self-funding, you can't get to a point where you are really scaling a business and getting to unicorn status. It's harder without the big checks and the kind of power that some of the Silicon Valley VCs have and can kind of put behind you. And I think it also depends on the type of expertise the investors might be able to provide you. I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of diligence that is super important to run. I mean, sometimes entrepreneurs get really excited about getting checks, but sometimes it's really, everything comes with strings attached. So it's really
Yeah.
important to understand,
Yeah.
from whom are you taking an investment? Does it make sense? Are they aligned with your vision? Is there other diligence you should be doing? Or if you feel like you can actually get to a point where with your own self-funding, you can start to see profitability, that's another consideration. So there, quite a lot of things to think about in the founder journey, but I really think it's unique to the entrepreneur and how
Yeah.
they see themselves growing that particular business.
I think that's phenomenal advice. And I think that that's something that people can take and it's practical, right? Because like you said, different strokes for different folks, right? In terms of what people want to do with their company, and there's obviously the added element of are you looking to build that unicorn, right? Are you looking to, because not a lot of people that's not what their goal is with their company, right? And so you have to have that in your forefront, right? And be able to know the expectations when you do take on that funding, right? To your example, like there is a lot of pressure and a lot of debt and a lot of lines that must be met, the revenue targets that must be hit, and things that have to occur as a product of that, right? So I definitely agree, and it's one of those things where you can obviously take that funding on for that growth, right? Growth becomes a lot easier to do with when you have more backing. However, it creates different problems when you have the funding as well, right? It's like a double-edged sword in a way. But when you have a great product, when you have that product market fit, I think it's so that's when the best time to take funding really should be, right? When it's like you've proven something out, you've proven out within a small market, you have your referrals, you have your customer base, you have your case studies, and then just pouring fuel on the fire is going to be able to take you guys to that next level as well. So I think
Yeah, so that's a great point. So you're saying in general, try to get things started, and then once you've actually made progress and have traction, then take a check to scale, scale, scale. That's another option, actually.
yeah.
Totally exists too.
Yeah, and it's a safer one, right? It's more of a safer one because, like you said, you never really know, your hunch. You never really know as an entrepreneur, right? Unless you've had the problem before, even sometimes when you've had the problem before and you want to still create a company, it's still something maybe the market's not ready for it or you have to wait. And I've talked to a lot
Sure.
of entrepreneurs.
Timing is everything. It's
Exactly,
so
timing is
true.
everything. So sometimes you want to be able to take small bets in that sense and saying, hey, instead of taking massive bets, right? And that's how I look at it in that sense. But Leila, it's been an absolute pleasure getting the chance to talk and hear a little bit more about your story. Definitely, you're a very bright entrepreneur, and I'm excited to see what you guys continue to do with Reliance and what you guys continue to scale towards. I think it's something that is exciting, and it's exciting to talk to people before they actually continue to grow, because then you can look back and say, I talked to that person, I talked to them. So if people are listening to this, are they and they're tuning in, they're like, hey, how can we check you guys out? What would be a good next step for them to take for that itself?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me and the great questions, Alessandro. It's been a pleasure. So folks can visit us at Reliance, RELYANCE.ai, where you can book a demo, learn more about how to protect your technology stack, how to understand data privacy, data generally in your environment, work on your AI governance program using a true co-pilot, and get assistance with some of the security risks that might be found in a general technology stack at any SaaS, AI, or other type of organization.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to include that in the description for you guys to go ahead and check out. And if you guys did make it all the way to the end, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and go check out Leila and the team. We hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks again, Leila. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Alessandro. Pleasure was mine.